Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News, and Lewis Hamilton has branded the W13 that he's driving around Montreal this weekend as the worst F1 car he has ever had, suggesting that Mercedes effectively this year's a write-off and they should focus instead on developing next year's car because it's not going to get any better. Very much a treat to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel, lots of great support the last couple of days. First of all, we've got to talk about the driver lineup we might have next year. Otmar over at the Alpine side believes that Piastri will be driving in F1 next season. The current rumour is he's going to replace Nicholas Latifi over at Williams. That seems more and more likely by the day. Some sort of loan arrangement they might come up with there, with the pretty stacked driver talent they have in the Alpine team at the present time. This also on the Alpha Tauri side, that Gasly, apparently according to Franz Tost, is 100% confirmed to be staying with Alpha Tauri to race with them for next season. There were certainly some rumours, like Gasly of course had his contract, but in Baku he had suggested that he was talking with Helmut Marko about a potential loan arrangement with another team, because Gasly at some point wants to get back in the Red Bull seat. Perez is going to be there another couple of years at least. I guess Gasly's thinking, okay, maybe I'll just stick it out for a couple of years, hope that Perez retires or something, right? And then I can get that seat back. I'm sure that is his plan. I'm sure he was also thinking about, okay, could McLaren, if Riccardo's not there anymore, be a move as well? But yeah, apparently not. Apparently Alpha Tauri Gasly is going to be the thing for at least next season. Now also confirmation from Formula 1 that Leclerc will take a grid penalty this weekend, yet I believe to be 100% confirmed whether it's going to be just a 10th place or whether it's going to be to the back of the grid, because he's taken at least one new power unit element, but if he takes out, significantly more than that, he'll have to go all the way to the back. So he's definitely going to get some sort of grid penalty. F1 confirmed it yesterday. Not quite sure how severe it's going to be as yet. So for now, he's just taken a new control electronics package. You're only allowed 2 of those in a season, and if your engine explodes, it overheats or whatever, you probably have to get a new one, right? So this is going to be his 3rd one already, going to get a penalty for that one, and it's possible they could actually make further changes as well. That seems rather likely because we heard the rumours that they want to bring in the additional turbo right to this engine, because effectively I think one of the key reasons why their kind of engine blew up back in Baku was that they reused some of the elements from the power unit that exploded back in Spain, and therefore a mixture of new elements, old elements didn't work out for them particularly well. So they might have to think, okay, we probably just need to have everything anew, and that probably means he'll go to the back of the grid. For now, I believe technically a 10th place grid penalty, but he's going to be starting a little bit further back. They played around with a few things, right, not upgrading the turbo until I believe today. So there will be a significant penalty coming into play at the very least, and more than likely starting right at the back of the grid alongside Yuki Tsunoda potentially as well. Of course, another driver having reliability issues so far this season. As Charles Leclerc said, obviously I'm starting more towards the back, but I think that was the best decision. Let's see how it goes. Certainly I think there's some confidence there that he can fight his way back through the grid, but I'm sure there might be a thought today in qualifying of how much Leclerc can can he give Sainz a tow, for example, to make him be able to compete with the Red Bulls on the front row, because yesterday's practice indicated that the Red Bulls and the Ferraris pretty much on dead level pace here this weekend in terms of qualifying stints, in terms of race pace. Again, Red Bull are going to have something of an advantage. This is the other thing as well. Yuki Tsunoda from, of course, Alpha Tauri will take a new power unit and turbocharger, similar really to what's happening with Charles Leclerc. That'll mean he'll start from the back of the grid. He had a few issues early on in the season. I remember Saudi Arabia specifically, so he's going to have to take a serious grid penalty. He'll be at the back alongside Charles Leclerc probably this weekend. Let's dive into the Mercedes stuff then, right? So they were giving it a go. They were trying some new ideas, as they pretty much do every single Friday at this point, in FP1, FP2. George Russell seems to pretty much be running the bog standard car, and then they use Lewis Hamilton as the guinea pig to test out all the new changes they want to try and make. And pretty much always, it's been Hamilton's car that's been worse, right? Everything they try out with this W13 does not seem to help him at all. This is what they tried out yesterday. They just decided to cut a hole in the floor. I know a lot of people looked at this and said it kind of screams of desperation, that they have no idea what to do anymore, so they're just going to cut a hole in the floor and hope it works. And apparently this made it even worse, right? I don't know who would have guessed that one, to be honest. But they have added an additional stay, because I think their floor is more flexible than they would like. And it is rather interesting, actually, the fact that, let's say the FIA decided that, okay, due to the porpoising issues, they're allowing a second stay like this to be used, and Mercedes just had one on hand ready to go, right? So that has raised some questions by some other teams, but still didn't really seem to affect their performance in FP1 yesterday, and FP2 is probably even worse. I wanted to share this that came up from Sky Sports right here, because they interviewed Lewis Hamilton. I believe the first couple of seconds here were, I don't reckon Hamilton really realised that the camera was running, but he says, look, this car is so bad, goes on to explain that it's the worst car he's ever felt around Montreal, the fact that he reckons this car's effectively just a write-off. It's so hard to even keep out the walls around these circuits based on the bouncing they're experiencing, and basically just says they should focus on next year.
This car's so bad.
Lewis, tricky day out there for you. I know you tried the new floor this morning, some pretty experimental setups this afternoon as well. Talk us through your day.
Yeah, pretty much like every Friday for us. trying lots of different things. Experimental floor on my side, which didn't work. Nothing we do to this car generally seems to work. So we're trying different setups. Me and George went with much different setups in this P2, just to see if one way works and one way doesn't. I'll wait to hear whether or not how it felt for him, but for me it was a disaster. It's like the car is getting worse. Like it's getting more and more unhappy the more we do to it. So I don't know. We keep working on it, and it is what it is. I think this is the car for the year. So we just have to tough it out and work hard on building a better car for next year. It's one touch of the curb and the thing goes flying. You know, it's so stiff. And here you need to be able to use the curbs. So it's very, very tricky. It's not the Montreal that I know, that I'm used to, and that I've experienced in my career. It's the worst that I've ever felt any car here. Fundamentally, it's just the fundamentals of the car it is what it is, and it's going to be a struggle. It's just a monumental fight the whole time to keep it out the wall. It's when it bounces, when the car leaves the ground a lot, and when it lands, it grips up and it goes in either different directions, and so you're just trying to catch a car that jumps, hops, grips, like it's tough. So just keeps you on edge, and there was some big hits today, but we've raised the car and it doesn't make a difference.
So certainly tough scenes. Even said during the practice session itself, the car is now undrivable. So it does seem like everything they tried to the W13 on any track that isn't exact, like if it's incredibly buttery smooth, the circuit is completely flat, as we saw in Spain. The car seems to deal with those surfaces quite well, but there's not many tracks on the calendar that are quite as smooth as Spain is. There might be a few that are upcoming, that there might be like, maybe 4 or 5 that behave similarly to Spain between now and the end of the season. But on any track that's like Canada, a bit bumpy, like Baku, for example, the car just seems to behave absolutely horribly, and everything that they're trying right now for Hamilton in that Mercedes just doesn't work out. So the W13, he believes like this is probably what we've got to deal with for the rest of the year. I'm sure he's getting pretty frustrated with them trying all these experimental things on his car and them still not working, right, and putting him at a disadvantage compared to his teammates. But it's just something that I suppose they're going to have to try and deal with, because at the end of the day, Mercedes realize they're like, look, okay, this car didn't work. It's not the car we expected we were building, but at the end of the day, they've got to understand what went wrong with this car if they actually want to improve it going forward, right? They can't afford to say, okay, look, let's just go super basic and just solidify P3 in the constructors. They're going to get third in the constructors more than likely anyway. So doing these experiments makes sense just so they can understand, okay, what was bad with our design philosophy this year? What do we need to change for next year? But Hamilton's like, look, just get all the task already of building next year's car, because this one certainly was not going to cut it. And the fact that he said that this is the worst Montreal he's experienced in his career, every single other car in his career he's driven around here, he's had a much better time than he did this time around, right? It's the worst that I've ever felt in any car around this track, which is quite remarkable actually, because it's not the Montreal you know. He certainly loves this track. Had of course, his debut year 2007, got pole here, won his first race, his maiden race at this track. Of course, it feels very different to him seemingly this time around with the current car they have, saying of course the car was absolutely terrible. And this was previously, and probably still is just about, Hamilton's worst ever car. This is the 2009 McLaren, where he basically failed to score points in, I think, the first several races of the season, but eventually they turned it around and actually won a race here. Now, at the time, this was the worst car he'd had. He said actually back in April, I believe, that effectively the current W13 as it was back in April is pretty similar to this car, but he said this car was still slightly worse, and still was the worst car he'd ever driven. But especially around Montreal, apparently, this current W13 iteration, whatever they were playing around with yesterday, was worse than even this machine, which was, by Hamilton's own admission, the worst car he's ever driven. So, maybe the W13 is going to pip the 2009 McLaren on that one, because not a pretty sight what was happening to Hamilton yesterday. Control those cars around the corners. It looked like he was on ice half the time. Not just Hamilton and Mercedes, of course, suffering from these issues. Ferrari as well. It does seem like this weekend the FIA are not going to kind of impose this technical directive. They've introduced it. They're going to get some data, some information on what they might have to expect. But like a lot of kind of team principals, the likes of Christian Horner, saying that, well, hang on a second here. The FIA, do they really know enough to say, oh, well, you've got to raise your right height by 10 millimeters? What if it becomes especially windy in certain situations? Therefore, the bouncing becomes a little bit worse for some teams, than would normally be expected in normal conditions. What's the FIA going to do then, right? So he's a bit concerned with the FIA being unable to like tell you effectively how to run your car. Now, well, this weekend at least for Ferrari, Mercedes, the other teams that might be affected quite a lot by this new technical directive, which is going to force the teams to stop the porpoising effectively or get disqualified or penalised during the race itself. They really don't have to worry about that this weekend, at least for now. And well, Sainz was also having issues yesterday in FP2 as well. But yes, the rain has been coming down. We're expecting a little bit of a wet qualifying. We'll see how that goes later today. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.